In this lecture, we're going to apply the first principle of object-oriented programming, encapsulation. And that basically means that we should bundle the data and methods that operate on the data inside a single unit or object. So in this program, we are storing some data inside these three variables in the main method. These variables are local to this method, so they are not accessible outside of this method. On the other hand, we have this calculate wage method. So we're passing those variables as arguments to this method. So here we should follow the encapsulation principle and bundle these variables and this method inside a single unit. We want to encapsulate them like a capsule inside a single unit, okay? So what should we call that single unit or class? Here we're dealing with the concept of an employee because we're calculating the wage of that employee. So let's add an employee class to this project. So over here, let's right-click our package and add a new class. We're going to call that employee. In this class, we're going to declare three fields, the same as the variables that we declared in our main method. So public int base salary, but we're not going to initialize this to this value because we don't want to hard code this for all employee objects. This is just a blueprint. So later when we create an employee object, for each employee we'll set the base salary, okay? Now let's declare the second field, hourly rate, and finally extra hours. So three fields. Now we should declare our calculate wage method. So public, we don't need to use static because earlier I told you that we use static only when we want to call a method from the main method. So public int calculate wage. Now what parameters do we need here? Shall we add the base salary and these other values? No, because we're storing these values inside these fields in this class. So there is really no need to add parameters to this method. So in this method, we can simply return base salary plus hourly rate times extra hours. So this is the first sign of object-oriented code. Our calculate wage method has no parameters. Previously, we had 3 parameters. Now we have 0 parameters. So instead of passing values around, we should encapsulate these values along with the methods that operate on them inside a single object. Now let's make an assumption. Imagine that the base salary and the hourly rate are fixed for 1 year, but extra hours is going to be different every month. So we don't want to store that in this field. Instead, we want to pass that as an argument to this method. So here I'm going to add extra hours and remove it from here. So every month we call this method and pass the extra hours in that month, okay? Now let's go back to our main class. On the top, first we're going to create an employee object. So var employee, we set it to a new employee. Yeah, here we can use the dot operator to directly set the value of these fields. So we set the base salary to 50,000. Next, we set the hourly rate to 20. Now we're going to call the calculate wage method and pass the extra hours, okay? So employee dot calculate wage, and we pass 10 as the extra hours. This will return the wage. We store it here. And finally, we can print it on a terminal. So with these changes, we don't need these variables here anymore. We should also remove the call to this method. And that means that we can remove this method from our main class. So with these changes, our main class is now cleaner. It has fewer lines of code. It's easier to maintain. We have encapsulated the data and the method that operates on the data inside a single class. So if tomorrow we want to build another application that involves calculating the wage of our employees, we can simply copy this class to that project or put it in a reusable library so we don't have to copy paste code around. But wait a second, we're not done yet. This code has an issue, and we're going to look at that next.